Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Burning Question series by Fantasy Football Scout. In this series, Pras and I, Sonaldo, talk about the key hot topics for the week. Pras, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Yeah, I've had two bad weeks, but we move. That's why we're doing Thursday pods. I have nice time to recover, but only way is up. We're showing ranks today, are we?
Yeah, first time we're showing ranks this season.
There we go. I have nothing to hide now. I'm having a terrible start, but all I can say is it's not going to change my decision making. It's not going to change my content, and I will be fine by the end of the season because there's a long way to go. So if there's anyone else in a similar position who've had not a great start or the wild card hasn't worked out, not to worry at all. Long way to go.
Yeah, I mean, your rank is not reflective of your decision making skills and processing, so long ways to go, I agree. We're going to keep it short today because we have a short turnaround. For today's agenda, we're having some macro strategy talk, fixture crunch, yellow cards, helicopter view. You guys know on Burning Questions, this is process bread and butter. So excited to hear and learn about what you think the next few weeks, how we should approach moving forward. And then we'll talk about defenders, what to do with Arsenal and City with their blank in 12, what to do with Liverpool and Chelsea. Obviously, Liverpool and Salah played really well yesterday, so very interesting. You own both Trent and Salah, so I'm interested to see what you're thinking there. We all own Reece James, so some dilemmas there. And then we'll talk about a free hit team for game week 12, which should be reflective of sort of your decisions you make this week. And then maybe a short captaincy because I do have a different captain in mind this week, which sounds crazy,
Ooh,
but you
no
already
one
know
can
who.
guess what it is.
So that's the agenda today. First things first, let's go to the fixture crunch provided by the great Legomane. There's a great article on the members area. Do check out the members area by Neil on the fixture crunch. So, Pras, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, so okay, let's talk about 11 to 13. And so one thing we want to say is we're not going to be doing a video next week because there's midweek fixtures. So this almost covers 11 to 13 as a package. And so look, what's important in 11 to 13 is there's a midweek game week. And always when there's a midweek game week, it's very different per team how they will handle it. Rotation is different and it sort of comes into how the fixtures pan out. So the first thing to think about is which are the teams that play Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday. This is basically the worst outcome for the teams that happen to play in this period because you're essentially playing 3 games in 7 days. Managers have said many times that they hate this because there's no time to prep for any of the games. There's 3 teams who have this, which is Liverpool, Chelsea, and Man United. And as Neil pointed out in his excellent article on Scout, where he was talking about rest times, when you're talking about Liverpool, when it rains, it pours, basically. When it's not going that well in the Premier League, I know in Champions League they did well last night, but when it's not going well, it just becomes very difficult. So the scheduling is hard on Liverpool. They are the ones with the least or the smallest rest time between the games. They will only have 73 hours between game week 11 and 12 and only 63 hours between game week 12 and 13. So what that means is immediately we're going to do a section on Liverpool, Chelsea, City, and Arsenal. But for me, that means that rotation should come. Now, obviously, they've had injury issues and they don't have the luxury to rotate everybody. But essentially, if your player wasn't rested last night, which as a Salah owner, I was happy to see he did, everyone is at risk, whether that's Firmino, whether that's Nunes, whether that is Robertson. So we will talk about these assets in more detail, but that's something on Liverpool. Chelsea, again, only 76 hours between 11 and 12 because they play Sunday and then they play away to Villa and then they're away to Brentford. Now, Brentford isn't really an away game, but it's still a very short period between Villa and Brentford, only 76 hours, and then 68 hours between the next game. The thing with Chelsea is, though, they will have limited travel, as I said, apart from the Man United. Man United is at home and Brentford is pretty close. Aston Villa, Birmingham is pretty close. But you know Potter, right? I mean, you saw what he did in the Premier League last
Hmm.
game week.
Seven
He will
changes.
rotate
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
So for me, this puts a question mark on Chilwell, Aubameyang, Mount, Sterling. And James again we'll talk about. So Chelsea, Liverpool, I think are teams where rotation will happen just because of the fixtures, just because of how they've landed. And the third team is Man United. I know that's not hot on people's agenda, but Man United also have they have a Thursday, which is tonight. Then they have a Sunday, then they have a Thursday, and then they have a Sunday. So very little rest period as well. No, sorry, I misread that. They have a Thursday, then they have a Sunday, then they have a Wednesday and have a Saturday. So the same Sunday to Saturday period. So not ideal again for Man United. And two of those games are Newcastle, Spurs, and Chelsea, all difficult games. Now let's come to the good teams, the teams that have a nice schedule, even though it's a midweek. So Bournemouth are number one. They have a nice rest because they will obviously play tomorrow. And then, they play midweek and then they play on the Sunday. So it's almost like they're playing Friday to Sunday and have a game in the middle. So not an issue at all. Not that they rotate anyway. Then you have Brentford, nice, easy rest. The ones that are relevant for us, or at least high on our list, because Tony will play for Brentford anyway, is Spurs. Spurs have a very nice run. So people who are thinking about any semi-rotation assets, so I'm thinking of Sessegnon, Perisic, they're not going to miss out because of a rest, essentially. They may miss out because of general rotation, because Spurs play on a Saturday, then they play on a Wednesday, and then they play on a Sunday. So they have a full break, almost a 9-day period for the 3 games, instead of the 7 days. Leicester have a nice run. They obviously have the game on, where is Leicester? Leicester play on Saturday, then they play Wednesday, and then they play on a Sunday. So I think good amount of rest, except between 12 and 13. And the best of them is Man City. Man City obviously have no game in game week 12. So yes, there is a blank, but what it means is you can wheel out Haaland, KDB, Foden, Cancelo in game week 11, and you can be pretty sure that they'll start game week 13 as well. So those are some thoughts on teams.
Yep. So I think the point I want to make on this is that moving forward, Pras, I don't think it's just looking at 11 to 13 as well, because granted, certain teams are different because certain teams have probably clinched the top spot in the group for Champions League or second spot, but the navigating 14, 15 is also going to be quite difficult for some of the top teams. So basically, the point I want to make is that maybe we're overthinking game week 12, as in trying to field and find players from the best teams that play, because maybe this rotation is just going to happen inevitably, and a lot of players that we already own are going to get rotated. And this, we're going to talk about Reece James, but this brings me to a simple conclusion that Reece James is just not a viable option anymore for me, because not only Chelsea continue to change through Potter, they're also going to have a rotation risk further down the line, and so I think it's about nailing the players and having 15 or 14 players that are going to assure to start from even the smaller teams, because the break that the smaller teams have is a huge advantage over the top teams who are really entering a fixture crunch period before the World Cup.
Let's talk about, let me do a quick suspensions section as well. Then let's come to Chelsea, because I think we disagree on James, and this will really be team dependent on why some may decide to keep James and some may decide to sell. Both are equally fine, but let me do this quick one on the next section, because I want to just have all the macro points made before we get into the team discussion, right? So if you go to the suspension slide next, I just wanted sort of people to be aware of, as they're looking at assets or they're looking at a blank coming up, that there's basically 2 key players, or even some have Dalot. Jesus, Maddison, and Dalot are on 4 yellow cards. So if they get if they get another, that's a suspension before the World Cup. So they will miss out 1 game. There's also a few very important players who are on 2. So if you're thinking about getting one of those in and they get 2 yellow cards between now and game week 16, they will miss 1 game week as well. So that is Saliba, Tony, I'm only listing the main ones. James, Havertz, not so popular. Mitrovic is on 3. There is then Neco Williams, I guess less popular. Kane is on 3 as well. So all I wanted to do is just kind of highlight this to people that don't get sort of caught out. Maddison is not guaranteed to play in game week 12. If he gets a yellow card this game week, he's not going to play in game week 12. So just something to think about. Or if you're looking for a striker spot after game week 13, maybe Jesus is a little bit more risky and maybe Saka is the better option. So as you think about future options, this is something important to keep in mind. This is from the FF Scout website. So this is updated pretty much every game week. So have a look there more details. So let's go to now our helicopter macro view, and let's talk about the 4 teams that everyone wants to sort of talk about, or fifth if you want to talk about Spurs as well. So we can take it one by one. You want to start with Chelsea then? You have thoughts on the game.
Just on the yellow cards, I know the common phrase is, or the common thinking is of Diego Costa and how he, had 4 yellow cards and went forever. Do you even consider 3 yellow cards to be danger territory? I guess Saliba defender, but I think this 3 yellow cards might be overthinking it. Even 4 doesn't worry me too much, honestly, Pras.
3 shouldn't worry you. 3 is just something to monitor, right?
Okay.
So no one's getting Saliba this game week, but if he gets another yellow card against Leeds this game week, then think about it. So
Yeah.
4 is almost like, you need to be on alert. 3 is just, you just need to remember at the back of your head. For example, Kane at 3, irrelevant. I mean, he's not a yellow card magnet, right? So it's not like he's going to get 2 more. And we're only talking 6 game weeks now. So yeah, you're right. It shouldn't be top of your mind, but it should be in your mind.
Okay, cool. Okay, we have the fixture crunch 11 through 16 here. Crystal Palace, West Ham, Arsenal at the top, and then this is skipping out game week 12, and then at the bottom we've got Southampton, Brighton, and Leeds. So interesting. Blank game week 12 obviously is a dent in our plans. But let's talk about Liverpool and Chelsea.
Well,
and
first I wanted to say why I've removed game week 12.
Okay.
I've removed it because of the point you made, where people are fixated too much on this blank. And they're thinking, I need to put out 9, 10, 11 players in the blank. But then you need to think about the team that you will have coming out of the blank as well, or what the team that you'll put out this game week. And so what we've done here is, you can do this on the Scout website. You can remove one game week. So this is 11, 13, 14, 15, 16. And you now have a clear view on which are the teams you want to target if game week 12 didn't exist. So you don't have these Man City or Arsenal blinkers where you're selling your Man City, Arsenal players just so that you can field a team in 12. So, sorry, carry on.
No, fair. So I don't know, should we start with Liverpool and Chelsea and then get to City and Arsenal?
Okay, so let's continue Chelsea. So you think, I agree with you that because of the rotation, because of the Sunday, midweek, Saturday fixture, I think Chilwell is a little bit of a no-go. Simply because he will probably play 2, miss out 1. Cucurella, similar. Only 2 players so far have played every game or started every game under Potter. That's Mount and Kepa. And even Mount, you can sort of see he was taken off at halftime, I think. So he could play, but you don't sort of expect anyone to play all 3. Now, the fixtures after for Chelsea, basically after coming out of the blank, are Man United at home, Brighton away, Arsenal at home, Newcastle away. None of them are amazing.
Mixed bag, yeah.
But you can expect them to keep a couple of clean sheets, maybe the Man United, Brighton, Newcastle, actually maybe 1. So people who are looking at a James out, this is a case where you can say, look, if James is going to miss Brentford in game week 12, maybe he needs to go out. On the other hand, if he plays the game week 12 fixture, which is the money fixture, then you can probably hope to keep him. It really depends on how your setup looks in game week 12.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, still news dependent, right? We might get some better updates. There's a couple thinkings here. First of all, the time period between 11 to 12 for Chelsea is one of the, as we mentioned earlier, one of the worst, right? I think they're second worst after Liverpool. So if he misses 11, there's a high chance he misses 12, just from a gut feel, unless, maybe that essential 1 game miss is enough time for him to return in game week 12. And then, as you said, if you come to game week 13, there's a lot of, there's a mixed bag of fixtures. On top of that, I'm also even worried about Reece James maybe rotation within Potter's system as well. He is probably their, one of, if not their best player or most essential player. I get that, but when Potter has a chance to rest one of his best players, he might end up doing that. So it depends on Champions League state, depends on a couple things, but the biggest thing is I think he'll miss 11 and 12, which is why I'm hesitant to keep him. Plus team dependent, as you said, because I have Zuma to cover. So he's not like the most urgent transfer, but I don't want 6 million sitting on the bench when I already have 3 decent defenders to navigate the next couple weeks for me.
Fair enough. So I think that's okay on Chelsea. Just for people who haven't sort of kept track, the latest we're hearing is that he's definitely out of Villa. but he may have a chance for 12. But as you say, Andy, you never know. And you don't want to be in a situation where leading into 12, he's out, and then you're sort of making panic transfers because that's one more problem you deal with.
Yeah.
A lot of people may just say, okay, I'm going to play Andreas Pereira this week and just see how the James injury looks like. Because if he's playing Brentford, I think he's a definite hold. There's no reason to drop him. I don't think he's as much of a rotation risk. Potter can do what he's done at Brighton in the past. He's always been known to rotate, but I don't think James is one of the guys who will be there. But after injury, who knows? Maybe he's being managed or something like that. So
let's say
I'm with you.
Let's say we get definitive news that he misses this week, but in the press conference or something, there's an iffiness about him possibly coming back for that Brentford fixture. You would still hold with the chance.
If you can put out a good team, if you can put out a decent team this week, or you can roll maybe just having Andreas Pereira starting, and Mitrovic injury also will be important here. If Mitrovic is fit, a lot of people have Mitrovic, then you can hold him. Basically, that's my thinking. And then you just evaluate what you want to do with his, because it's not just selling James, it's what do you do with his money? Because always we talk about have a wildcard team in mind for game week 13. When you come out of the blank, what is the team that you want to have? In my mind, that team includes Haaland,
Jesus,
Foden, could be Jesus, could be Saka, Martinelli. It could, it has, I guess, another 8 million mid, like a Bowen. So it could have a Salah, maybe, if that's something that you wanted to do. So you have to sort of keep in mind, where are you going with this? Where are you going with the James money? If you really need the James money this week to do something, I don't know what that is. Maybe you want to get to Kane or to Son or to Salah. Salah can wait next week anyway. So think about what you want to do, and that's what should sort of determine. We will not get any update in the press conference. Potter is going to say he's out of Villa. We will assess him. He's looking much better. And when the news says that the injury doesn't look as bad, they're talking from the reference point of the reader who's thinking about the World Cup. Not everybody is an FPL geek like us who's thinking about the midweek. People are thinking about the World Cup, that, James should be okay for the World Cup. And that's the issue, that you'll get injury news that, it's minor, it's nothing. But yes, you're right. He could miss 11, 12, and 13. So I think that's that on Chelsea. Let's move to, the other problematic team, which is Liverpool.
There's a couple questions on Kepa. If you have the luxury to even think about Kepa in your team, I mean, you must be extremely well planned or very lucky, because all of us have at least 2 injuries plus, and even 2 is pretty decent at this point in time, including the yellow cards and who knows, rotation. So Kepa, I still don't feel confident bringing him in if you're considering him personally.
I think if you're like on a wild card, for example, some people are thinking about a game week 13 wild card, but have so many issues right now, are on wild card, or maybe they don't have any problems. So I think the issue with game week 9 wild card or game week 8 wild card is we had no idea who the nailed keeper is, both at Chelsea and at Leicester. Yeah. Now you know that Ward's keeping his place. So if the Kepa experiment fails, then you get to Ward. So I think Kepa and Ward is a good shout if you wanted to go there on a wild card, for example, or if you have a deputy, because he could lose his place. Kepa could lose his place any game week. He's one mistake away from losing his place. Yeah. So it's a risk, but maybe it's worth it.
Yeah. Okay. So Arsenal, you said?
No, let's go to the bad team. So first bad team was Chelsea with the bad fixture. The next one is Liverpool. Again, because of the fixture crunch, I just feel that there's a lot of love for Darwin, and he is basically hogging up a lot of the big chances. So he is getting that. I'm not denying it. But my issue is he played last night. He's going to play the City game, I would think. So if he plays the City game, which one is he missing? He could miss West Ham or miss Forest. And you having if he misses West Ham, then you have a problem, because you have a cameo in the 1 week where you actually needed him to start. Or if he misses Forest, then you miss the striker playing against the worst team in the league. That was my issue with Darwin. Jota missed out yesterday, and Jota is going to be nailed. I expect him to play all 3. Because of the Diaz injury, he's going to play on the left. Now, the problem with Jota is there's 2 problems. Number one, he apparently was about to start last night, and the doctors said that maybe you should rest him. You don't know what that issue was, and you don't know if that was fatigue or anything else, and if that crops up again in the next 3. So for me, that also sort of makes Jota a little bit risky. And then you have Salah. So I mean, what do you think about Salah?
I think he's definitely a hold. As you mentioned, high rotation risk for Liverpool, but he got the benching that he needed. He came off, scored a hat trick in within 10 minutes, and lovely strikes, right? Like really, Salah like finishing. Probably confidence is boosted a bit. Granted, it was relatively weaker team, but I think you've made your bed with Salah in game week 9 wild card. This is the advantage you have, and you just have to sort of hold through it, see how it happens in 11 and 12. So I think it's a keep for you. I'm sure you're thinking the same thing, Pras.
Yeah, look, last game week I had mentioned I was thinking about Salah to Foden, and Greenwood to Aubameyang, and basically the last evening before the deadline I was priced out, so I didn't do it.
Mm.
So I'm not going to tell everyone that get Salah or he's a definite buy, because look, the problem is that he could again. Yeah, last night the hat trick came when he moved to the center. So they persisted with the 4-4-2, but in this case, Elliott played on the right side where Salah played, and Salah came on instead of Nunes, Firmino, and he played up top. He looked great. He's a great finisher, but the problem remains that against Man City, they're definitely going back to 4-4-2, or even if they do 4-3-3, Salah is going to be playing out wide. Now, he does interplay with Nunes and they do swap positions, but look, it's going to be the same Arsenal situation where it could be very well be that he gets one penalty area touch in the game. Yes, in the Arsenal game, he got one penalty area touch. So that's the problem, that in some games, for a 13 million asset, you may not get what you want. So if you have him, I think you definitely keep him, given that there could be a spark. There's a small chance that he gets another run out in the center. I mentioned the fixture crunch. Maybe in one of the games when Darwin misses out, Elliott plays on the right and Salah plays in the middle. It's a possibility. So, and if that happens to be in the game week that you captain him, like game week 12 against West Ham, then wow. I mean, that's what you want. So I think if you have him, definitely keep him. You wanted him for the period, which is 11 and 13. So to take him out before Man City, I would think it would be a little bit knee-jerky. So I definitely intend to keep him. For people who don't have him.
Go ahead.
For people who don't have him, I think that's also a little bit of an interesting topic, because let's say somebody is on De Bruyne. If you're on De Bruyne and you think that from game week 13, my ideal 3 City is Haaland, Foden, and Cancelo, then you could look to basically go KDB to Salah or Son if you don't like Salah. I mean, this is no Salah propaganda. And then you transition somebody else like a Maddison back to Foden. So then you end up with your ideal 3 City, but you did it via the route of a Salah captain in game week 12 if you wanted to, or a Son. So I think that's an interesting play if somebody wanted to go there. If you're happy with your premium, if you're on a Kane and you're happy with him, if you're on a Son and you're happy with him, then you don't have to do it. That's basically where I'm at.
Yeah, it's just very interesting how things shift really quickly, because when I brought Son in game week 8, which was a wild thing to do, I give you that, because KDB was the right answer. Regardless of whether I brought KDB or Son game week 8 or 9, it was always to move to Salah in game week 12, at least early initial planning, because you just think of him as the ultimate captaincy option based on previous bias and previous history, and the fact that he scored a hat trick yesterday should be a boost of confidence. There's so much hate on him as an FPL option right now, but Man City was always going to be a difficult fixture, but it's game week 12 where you really want him. I also don't understand why people are reading so much into the formation change. I mean, I think it was just one of those games where it was just a weaker opponent and Salah just did really well. So I wouldn't read too much into it, in my opinion. But yeah, the Man City fixture is definitely not going to be easy for Salah. So I don't think he's a buy right now, but he's a hold for sure for me if you do own him.
Yep, I think that's fair. And then I mentioned Robertson as well. I think Robertson is coming back. He played a few minutes, but I would expect him to start City, maybe West Ham and miss Forest, or he's not going to play the next 3.
Yeah,
that's time. The issue. Otherwise, in the formation that Liverpool are playing, the 4-4-2, the left-sided, so Tsimikas has been bombing forward like, he was as far advanced as Salah, if that means anything, against Arsenal and against the previous game, I think it was Ajax. So it's a good spot. And you'll see in our free hit draft that if you were to free hit and you knew that Chilwell and Robertson are starting, great. So But that's it, right? Nothing
Yep.
else. I mean, people are looking at Gomez as a 4.5. I wouldn't do that because that's basically you're going to have a dead spot after
Yep.
3 game weeks. I know we're coming to the World Cup, and if you really, really don't need that spot going forward and you're confident in that, then fair enough. You could go for a Gomez, but
Also, Matip is injured, right?
yeah, but
Correct.
Konate is there. So he
So
was he
yeah,
was
he could be
solid.
an option. Yeah, 4.5, 4.6, something like that.
No,
Probably
Konate is
more.
more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe like. Does anybody know? Maybe 4.9 or something. But yeah, maybe if you wait, you could hop on an defensive option there as well with the fixtures coming up. Granted, they haven't been great defensively.
Yep, Konate is 4.8. That's a better shout, actually. That's a better shout.
Okay. Next two teams who are blanking in game week 12. Should we go there?
Yeah, let's do that. So Arsenal, man, look, they are. I mean,
So
they
good.
gave they 3xG against Liverpool. I
So
mean,
good.
that's saying
Yeah.
something. So the whole narrative that they had easy fixtures and they did well due to the easy fixtures. I mean, they're the second best team right now in the league.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
they have after the blank, they have Southampton away, Forest at home, which is the money fixture, Chelsea away, the tougher fixture, and then Liverpool away, Wolves away, the easy fixture. You have to have two attackers, and everyone has.
Just a football question. What happened this year? Why is it just simply the Jesus like transfer that changed everything? Like what's going on?
People know their roles. People know their roles, and they've recruited. They filled in the blanks well. They needed. I mean, Martinelli has come a year longer. I mean, he's been great throughout, but he's grown up. Jesus has fit in perfectly. Arteta knows what he's doing. He's basically got the right pegs. Doing
all young
what he wants
too.
to
Yeah.
do. Yeah. So Saliba has been a great, refreshing change. I mean, he was loaned out last year. Nobody thought he would be this good. I mean, he's looking like a
One of the
prime Van
best.
Dijk
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Arsenal fans will love this chat. But look, the thing is, what we need to take out from an FPL point of view is you need to have two Arsenal attackers coming out of the blank. So whether that means that you have a Martinelli and a Saka or a Jesus and you just bench. So I saw in the chat there was a question that somebody had sent that they said, look, is it valid to put out 10 players because I've got KDB, Haaland, Cancelo, Martinelli, Jesus? That's actually, you'd put out 9. But still, look, I would say if you're happy with those 5, so I mentioned the City point, that if you're not happy with KDB, and I think that's a harsh thing to say. It's not about being not happy with KDB. He's doing fine. But if you want the funds elsewhere and you think Foden is going to do equally well as KDB, then why are you spending 12 million on KDB? Then that's the way you can get out of it. But if you're happy with Martinelli, if you're happy with, obviously you're happy with Haaland and Cancelo, just bench them. I don't think there's a need. I think the average players people will put out is about 10 or maybe 9 in this game week.
So before you go further, the premise for me on what to do with Arsenal and City is, I guess the first question is, without hits, what's the average of engaged managers or managers we're competing against in game week 12? How many are they going to field without hits?
I think 10.
10.
10 should be there.
Yeah.
Because people who have KDB, I think, will move.
Yeah.
People who have Jesus could possibly move because he's on 4 yellows, or they could just think that now I know that Saka's on pens, or Jesus wasn't even in the conversation when they got the penalty. It was between Martinelli and Saka who were debating who should take the pen. So
why I asked that, Pras, is let's say you can get to 10 and 12 with 4 City and Arsenal combined, and then Arsenal have Southampton in game week 13. You're 1 up ahead in the next game week, and because I guarantee you they'll do well against Southampton at this point in time, right? So, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe at 10, if you can get there without any hits and you have 4 City Arsenal, maybe that could be a good threshold or a good standard for you to think about.
You see, earlier people were thinking about maybe I can get rid of Haaland for Kane. And then get him back so that you get one additional player. You're not benching 12 million. But people are captaining Haaland this week. I mean, unless you really, really feel it, like, Andy here himself, who feels a Spurs captaincy this week, Haaland's going to be 180% as well against Liverpool.
Shit.
So, and it's not about EO. It's not about EO. I mean, it's about going against somebody who's playing a weak defense.
Yep.
I mean, Liverpool is a weak defense. Rangers cut them open in the first 10 minutes when they scored, when they scored. So Man City will score 2-3 goals minimum.
Yeah.
Well, Kane could also score a hat-trick. So it's the same logic. I mean, people backed against Haaland in game week 8, captained Kane, made about 3-4 points or slightly more. People backed against Haaland in game week 9 and they lost about 18 points. So it really depends. If you want to go there, you could. But I would personally think most people will bench Martinelli, most people will bench Haaland, and most will bench Cancelo. So that's already only an 11 that's left out of that. And then you have to account for the fact that people will put out a team with Neco Williams, with Andreas Pereira,
Another
with
one.
Soufal, who will probably get 1-pointers. And if they start, then 2-pointers. So it's not going to be great.
Yeah.
But what you don't want to do is you want to take these guys out, waste transfers for players who will get 2-pointers and then have to buy them again. That's what you want to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Even I probably have to start Neco in 12, and the reason is because of the injury crisis right now. So, yeah, maybe even 10 is tough to get to for a lot of managers without hits. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out.
All right. So I think we covered City as well. Let's go to defenders.
Okay. 1 second. Okay, we're at 30 minutes, Pras, by the way.
Yep, I think we're good.
Okay.
We're trying to keep this under an hour because of the short time for people to process this.
Castagna has a, I think, eye injury, from what I heard. So
yeah. Well, so let's talk about, these are defenders sorted for everything under 5 million. And we have sort of shown here their minutes per XGI. And that's what it's sorted by. So who is more attacking? What about the team XG conceded? So minutes per XG conceded in the middle column. Then you have their baseline BPS. And then you have your game week 12 opponent. Because let's be clear, we're buying these cheapo defenders so that they can actually play for us in game week 12. Some of them could also basically put out a performance in game week 11 because you could have a James replacement. So let's talk about it. I mean, I think Leicester, you know what you get. If you were thinking about a Leicester defender and if you're not sick of Ward already, I think they're okay. But I think they'll concede in this game week and in the next game week because they're playing Palace and Leeds. Both are attacking teams. But Castagna himself is in this list the most attacking of all defenders. So if you think they're good for a goal, and I think at home, both the games are at home for Leicester, they're a good team at home. So Castagna is an option if you wanted to go there, if he's fit, or Justin. Then you have Sessegnon. So tell me about Spurs. There's a whole situation where last night Sessegnon played again, second game in a row. Perisic was on the bench again. Obviously, that's good for Son, but that's not great for either Sessegnon or Perisic, whichever way you want to look at it. And then you have on the right side, you have Doherty, who played over the weekend, who missed out last night.
I was surprised about that, yeah.
Well, Emerson, there's their number one, and he's suspended in the league, so he came back. Yeah. So I don't know what the situation is there.
I think the way this is going is Sessegnon and Perisic are very dangerous too as FPL options now, because I think they'll play depending on the opponent is the way I feel about this. For example, this Frankfurt game, one of the reasons Son did so well is they played a 3-4-3 unlike the 3-5-2 over the weekend, and Frankfurt plays a 3-4-3. So that means that all three attackers are one-on-one situations against the defenders. Hence, Son had all that space and time in the world. And when you're playing a 3-4-3 team, that means you need someone who can run up really fast, but also run back really fast. And Sessegnon is the perfect role for that. And their attributes are different, right? Perisic is much more of a, sort of one-on-one dribbler, and then much better crosser than probably anyone on the team except Son. And then Sessegnon is just different type of skill set. The traditional sort of speedy wingback that you can think of. So you just can't go to either one of them. It's just too dangerous. I mean, they're going to get rotated for sure. I do understand that they have a good fixture turnaround from 11, 12, 13, but still, who knows who starts? It's a shot in the dark. Same thing with right side. I mean, we want to get to Doherty because of his price point and what he can potentially offer last season. But we haven't even seen that level yet. He had an okay game over the weekend, and then he gets rotated for Royale. One of the reasons why Royale starts so much for Conte is because of his speed, and Conte is all about speedy wingbacks, and Doherty doesn't have that, which is very surprising why Spence doesn't get the chance. But all wingbacks are off table for me in terms of Spurs.
Yep. All right. I think Spurs in general are keep, don't sell, but don't buy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you have a Sessegnon or a Perisic, I think might as well keep them. They will play 2 of the 3 game weeks. I mean, you could get one if you're unlucky, but they could equally play both 2 because one could be where Perisic starts on the right. So,
One thing,
so
Pras,
I think.
go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
One thing I just want to say is Mikel makes a good point that if you want to take a punt because of his price point, I think that's okay because you could take a punt on him because 4.5 essentially 4.6, and then he could become your 4th or 5th sort of defender. But as we mentioned earlier, or as I mentioned earlier in the pod, I just think that you need 15 guys who are reliable starters because of who knows what's going to happen over the next 6 game weeks.
Yep. Yep. Fair enough. I think, look, he will start against Everton. So yeah, you may make your points in just that game. So I don't hate it, but personally, I would want somebody who also is guaranteed to start in game week 12. Now, I know Emerson is still suspended for that game week, but is Doherty ready to play games in 5 days? I don't know. You could get lucky, but it's a fair punt. I think of all of them, he would be the fairest punt. Then let's go down. So this is actually under 5.5 million defenders. So now you see Gabriel as the number 3 most attacking defender. I think Arsenal is a discussion to be had. I know nobody's looking at Arsenal defenders now because of the blank, but everybody seems to think that Saliba is the best defender that they have. Yes, in real football, he's the best defender that they have. But in FPL, just because he's had 2 headers does not make him the most attacking. In fact, he's far from it. In fact, White is way more attacking. You see Ben White here on the list. He's number 7. He's way more attacking. He's overlapping against Liverpool. You remember he put in a few crosses. He's way more attacking than Saliba. He's 0.6 cheaper than Saliba. And he's almost as attacking as Gabriel. And Arsenal fans are telling me that if there's one player who will lose his spot, let's say if Tomiyasu moves to the right, then White will play centre-back with Saliba, not Gabriel, because Gabriel has looked a little bit more shaky. Yeah. So I'm not saying Gabriel is a minutes risk at all. I think White, Saliba, and Gabriel are all pretty nailed. But I would really think about Ben White if you don't have an issue in Game Week 12. And I know few people have tweeted, but this is data right in front of you. He is an attacking defender from the 2nd best defense in the league so far. So that's something I wanted to say on Arsenal defenders. Of course, if money is no problem and you think Gabriel is fine, which I think he is, then he is a solid option at 5 million.
Agree. 100% agree.
Let's talk about West Ham. So West Ham, I think they're a top 5 defense this year based on how Moyes has set them up, both from an underlying perspective as well as on the eye. You've got Zuma, you've got Cresswell. People went for Soufal. People have Emerson. So I think Emerson and Soufal are out just because of minutes risk, right?
Yep.
Cresswell is way more attacking, but he could also miss a game for Emerson. I don't know. I mean, that's what West Ham.
Why do you say he's way more attacking? Because
minutes per XGI.
Right, but he hasn't looked like the Cresswell recently. I feel like he's not crossing as much. I don't know where his XGI is generated from. Hard to argue against it.
He has had set pieces in the past, but I know that Bowen has taken them over. So maybe you're right. Maybe Zuma is the better option. He's also cheaper. 0.3 makes a difference. So between them, I think it's between Zuma and Cresswell if you wanted to go for a West Ham defender. Issue with West Ham is they have the Liverpool fixture in Game Week 12, which, again, you may argue is easy, but I think Liverpool are still a very good attacking team. They may be bad defensively, but they will score goals. So it's unlikely they keep a clean sheet in Game Week 12, but around 12, West Ham have one of the best fixtures around. So
the reason I went for Zuma in the wild card is because he rotates well with Trippier. Because Newcastle have tough fixture in 12. They have, I think they have Everton in 12, West Ham. So it rotates really well, but now that doesn't even matter. West Ham have who in 12?
Trippier has a good fixture in 13.
Okay. Anyways.
Trippier has a good fixture in 12. 11 and 13 are harder, but you're not going to bench Trippier, are you?
No. I would never bench him, but he wasn't, because Trippier didn't show up to, I didn't think he would be this good from the wild card. I was considering benching him for Zuma when he had a tricky fixtures because West Ham have good fixtures when they have tough fixtures, which
All
is
right.
I think 11-13. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people with Pope and Trippier or whatever, you just play them, man.
yeah,
I mean,
11-13. Yeah,
both are good for tougher fixtures, as we saw in Game Week 3 and Game Week 5 when they played City and Liverpool. Trippier, I think, scored in one of them, assisted in the other. So you just keep the guy, man. I mean, of all the problems, Trippier isn't the problem.
no, he's not a problem at all. I'm very happy to have him. Yeah,
Um, then you have a rogue Southampton player appear, which is Walker Peters, attacking 4.5, away to Bournemouth in Game Week 12. But the problem is his fixture this week isn't ideal. So it isn't ideal, right? Who does he play this week?
West Ham.
He plays West Ham. It's okay. It's okay.
Mm.
So maybe Walker Peters is somebody can think about. I know Southampton has been out of the discussion from an FPL point of view throughout, but he's an option. But I will now come to the main one, which is basically Brighton. So a lot of people are looking at Brighton defenders between Dunk and Webster, and there's a reason for it. I mean, they've been a
Fair.
good defense. Now, obviously, their underlying data includes the Potter era and the very good fixtures that they had at the beginning of the season. But the main reason why Brighton defenders appeal is basically that they have two good fixtures now, which is Brentford away and Nottingham Forest at home. I don't expect them to keep a clean sheet in either of them, but they're the best one out there. And this is why I hesitate when people are thinking about options for their defenders that don't just sort of make... So like I have James and Trent as problems. I don't want both of them to go to cheapo two defenders because I don't like two defenders of this list. I barely like one.
Yeah.
So that's the issue.
Yeah, there's very limited available cheap defenders from 11 to 13. I do agree with you. And the fact that you just said Brighton, you don't see them keep a clean sheet in 11 and 12. What is the point of going to Dunk then? Because 13 follows up with a terrible fixture, and the bullet header Dunk stuff is not happening this season. So,
I mean, between them, you can see here in terms of the underlying data that Webster is way more attacking than Dunk. Now, usually with centre backs, you tend to look at longer term data because centre backs aren't as attacking. So you should look at seasons and seasons of data, and seasons of data tell us that Dunk is more attacking than Webster. So you can see some purists going for Dunk. But I think if you want to go by what you're seeing right now, I think Webster gets more forward, even in open play. And he's the tall guy at being targeted on corners. I think we did a section on defenders earlier, so I think there's not much in it, but I like Webster for that reason.
Skip is talking about Botman. I don't think he's an option for many people because we're so doubled up on Newcastle, and even if you're not, then you're going to be doubled up on Newcastle, and I'm just not sure I want to be doubling up on a Newcastle defense right now, even though they've been playing well.
I think the appeal with Botman is the Game Week 12 fixture, Everton at home. And that's the reason why people got him in even Game Week 8 wildcards. You had Botman appear there only so that he can play for you in Game Week 12. Now, the fixtures around that aren't great, so you will never play him. But if you really desperately only need a defender, a Newcastle defense is a free hit defense. I mean, you would have double Newcastle defense if you were playing a free hit in Game Week 12. So that's that. I mean, let's go a little quicker. We have like 15 minutes left. So I will then talk about some other standout options. The best Newcastle defender you can go for if you had money would be Target. If you wanted to go for another Newcastle defender, Brentford have a tough game against Chelsea in Game Week 12, so I wouldn't go for me. I think the other option that people are looking at is Crystal Palace. So Crystal Palace, we've talked about the Zaha thing, that they have amazing fixtures throughout. Mm-hmm. Their defense isn't looking great. But again, if you look at long-term data for their defense, it tells us that Crystal Palace is a decent defense to back, especially for a 4.3 million or a 4.5 million for an Anderson. So Guehi and Anderson are perfectly fine picks because they have good fixtures. They have Wolves at home, which is as good as it gets in terms of attacking output. I mean, Neto is now injured as well. Wolves don't look great. I mean, even though they have Diogo Costa, it looks like a clean sheet could come in Game Week 12. So if you wanted to go for Guehi or Anderson, and that's really it.
Wolves defender, Kilman, maybe. I mean, 11 through 16, they have some of the best fixtures. But if you look at the fixture ticker, it's not that great, right? Crystal Palace in 12, Leicester in 13. Leicester still attacking. Brentford in 14. Brighton in 15, Arsenal in 16. So I don't think it's the best, but the fixture ticker says, as a long-term 6 game week pick, Wolves are not too bad. But yeah, they've been terrible this year, to be honest. So
77 minutes per XG conceded is not bad. I mean, it's okay. It's not bad. I mean, it's better than Man United. It's better than the Crystal Palace. So you could look at it, but I don't get inspired looking at Wolves' defense, to be honest.
So before we go, let me put you on the spot as you do always. Your top 3 James or I guess Trent replacements in the sub 5 million category.
So Ben White, if you can afford another Arsenal player or a blanker, Webster, Guehi.
Ben White, but you have to think about how many you'll have in 12. No,
that's what I said. So if you can afford to have him in 12, otherwise Webster and then Guehi.
So Ben White, if you can get to 10 players in 12 without a hit, you would do it?
Well, I can, for example, obviously I was smart enough not to have Martinelli. So I can get to Ben White because I can then still just bench 3, which would be White, Haaland, and Cancelo. So that's why I'm looking at White.
Makes sense.
Given other injuries, I may not go there. But I think White is easily the best option because you want that Arsenal player going forward as well.
Makes sense. You only have 2, which is great. Good for you.